Welcome to A Slice of Therapy. This podcast was created with Anchor. And if you've not heard of Anchor, let me explain. It's free. It's a really easy way to make a podcast. And it helps me because I can just do this every day directly into my phone, because there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. So if you fancy making a podcast too, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. One of the things I notice in my role as a therapist is that I talk to these consistently amazing people, and every single person has made some kind of change or done something difficult, and often in the midst of struggle they've made this change or that change or achieved that thing. And like the rest of us, what I notice is that they, like me, like you, like everybody, will miss the little victories that are going on here, and sometimes the big victories. And it seems almost like part of my role is to kind of shine a light on them and kind of go, hang on, have you noticed that thing that just happened? That thing that is a real achievement and accomplishment. Because one of the things that I think we all often do is we overlook our skill sets. We overlook the things that are going well for us. And I know certainly in terms of the things that I do well, I notice that I downgrade those, but I'm very impressed by things that I don't do well when I see others do them. And of course, when I speak to them and say, oh, wow, you do that, they're not particularly impressed with the fact that they do that, but they're kind of impressed with the thing that I do that they can't do. And so we're all in this little game of discounting ourselves, discounting the things that we do well. And sometimes it might be a skill set, but sometimes it's the wins that we manage to get, the things that manage to move us forward, even in the midst of struggle. We'll miss those. We'll overlook the fact that we've actually made that happen. And so in this episode, I wanted to talk about that, because what I'd like to encourage you to do is to not overlook them anymore, but to acknowledge them, even the really small ones, so that you get into a place where you realize that you're prolifically powerful and that you're making changes in your life all the time which move you forward. Now, when I talk about moving you forward, I'm often talking about really small things. I mean, they might be big things too, but those kind of small things that if we hadn't have done them, or in fact, if we'd done the opposite, things would not have been as good for us. And so we might think, well, I haven't done anything good today. There's been nothing that's moved me forward. And yet you might actually be out of bed. And if you are out of bed, hasn't that moved you forward? So that's another example, you see, of just discounting the little things that we could actually chalk on the board as a win. So anything at all, whether it's kind of making your bed, getting out of bed in the first place, brushing your teeth, it doesn't matter what it is. If its absence or its opposite would have actually been worse for it not happening, then that is actually a win. That is actually you being prolifically powerful to make something happen in your life that has moved you forward. And so rather than discounting those things, as we're often prone to do, and we do this all the time, of course, because we're just like, well, that's expected to happen. And so our expectations of ourselves rise to such a point where we then stop acknowledging the fact that we're doing things so well that we just expect it of ourselves. A bit like when you switch the light on and it comes on, and you just expected it to come on so you don't notice it. And you wouldn't half notice it if it didn't come on. You wouldn't half notice it if you weren't getting out of bed. You wouldn't half notice it if you weren't making yourself a meal or making sure that you were fed. So these things which fall below our radar, my encouragement is to spot them. And a really good way to spot them is just set an alarm on your phone for whatever amount of time is good for you, and then just ask yourself when the alarm goes off, okay, since the last alarm went off, what are these things that I did that I used my power to ensure that I moved forward? And count as well those things that fell into your lap, those little victories that sometimes just come our way, where it feels like we've had nothing to do with them, but nonetheless has been a bit of good news. Include that too, because that's a win as well. Include as well the things that have happened because of something you did yesterday or the day before. I don't know, maybe you ordered something and maybe it's just arrived. And its arrival is just its arrival, but then it wouldn't have arrived without you having ordered it. So those things that are happening in life today because of something you did a while back, include those as well. And let's start noticing our power. Let's start noticing our victories, even the tiny ones. Because once we start to acknowledge our victories, even the tiny ones, we start to see ourselves as the prolifically creative, powerful, successful people that we actually are. We begin to see ourselves as the prolifically capable person that we are. And in that power, and in that recognition of our power, simply because we're seeing all of these things over and over and over again, that we're contributing to our own well-being, to our own life, to our own success, to our own moving forward, then it makes us feel good and it changes our conception of who we are as well. Because every time we get one of those little victories, we get a lovely little hit of dopamine, which feels good. And so that's the idea of the podcast today. To spot your victories, to spot your wins, to spot every time you even inch forward. Because that speaks to the power that you have to move forward in the first place. And it even begs another question. If you have the power to make an inch move forward, how on earth did you do that? And in that question, there's a whole host of strategies and circumstances which you can actually get in touch with, which support your success. So then you go from a stage where you not only understand how powerful and capable you are, but you also begin to understand what are the things that you're doing that help you become powerful and capable. And so I'll leave it there for today. If you find it useful, please share it so other people can find this useful too. And if you'd like to subscribe to the podcast, it's completely free. So do that wherever you get your podcasts, whether it be Spotify or anywhere else. If you'd like to work with me one-to-one, then I'm Alun Parry. You can find me at liverpoolpsychotherapy.co.uk. So thanks for listening, and I'll be back tomorrow with another one.